Today, we're tackling supply chains, the systems that make the world go round, even if we don't always see them.
And trust me, they're way more interesting than you might think.
Absolutely. And to guide us on this deep dive, we've got Laura Cesari's work to unpack. She's a supply chain expert, got some bold ideas in her newsletter, and even a whole book coming out, The Misguided Gold Diggers.
She doesn't pull any punches of that title, does she?
Not at all. Basically, Cesari's saying companies have been so focused on cost cutting that they've missed the bigger picture, creating real lasting value.
Yeah, she's calling out what she sees as a huge disconnect, all this tech hype, all this buzz about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous.
Which, let's be honest, every business leader loves to throw around.
But Cesar argues that the years leading up to 2020 were actually pretty stable. Companies got so caught up in bracing for this so-called storm that they forgot to, well, build a strong house in the first place.
Meaning they weren't as resilient as they thought they were.
Exactly. And then what happens? The Ever Given gets stuck in the Suez Canal, throwing global trade into chaos, and suddenly everyone's a supply chain expert.
But as we saw, most didn't really know how to fix things long term.
Exactly. And that's where Cesar's research comes in. She's working with teams at Georgia Tech and the University of Wisconsin, analyzing data from over 100 companies to figure out what actually makes a supply chain successful.
And I'm guessing it's not just about squeezing every penny out of suppliers.
This is about finding a smarter, more sustainable path.
So what did Cesar and her research partners find?
Okay, so they dug into all this data from over 100 companies, right? The results are, well, they're kind of eye-opening. It turns out just focusing on cutting costs doesn't automatically mean higher profits. Surprise, surprise, huh?
Yeah, I was about to say, sometimes you got to spend money to make money.
Right. And Cesar's research actually backs that up. It's about finding this balance between your operating margin, so how much profit you make on each sale, and inventory turns, which is how fast your product's moving.
So, it's not just about being lean, it's about being lean and mean.
Exactly. You got to keep things moving, but you also got to make sure you're actually making money on what you're moving. And that takes a bit more finesse than just slashing cost wherever you can.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you actually put that into practice? How do you strike that perfect balance?
That's where things get really interesting. This is where Cesar's outside-in approach comes into play.
Outside in, what's that all about?
Instead of just relying on historical sales data to predict what customers want, she's saying companies need to be looking at real-time information. Like, what are people actually doing right now?
Less crystal ball, more like looking out the window.
Yeah, exactly. It means breaking down those silos between departments. You got to get marketing, sales, logistics, everyone on the same page about what's actually happening out in the market.
Which I imagine is easier said than done in some of these big companies.
Oh, for sure. It's a whole different way of thinking, but it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, how so?
Because when you're in tune with what customers want right now, you can be way more responsive. You can avoid those stockouts that frustrate everyone.
I can't count how many times I've tried to buy something online only to find it's out of stock everywhere.
And that, my friend, is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how these hidden supply chains are actually shaping our lives every single day.
So what's the takeaway here? Are we doomed to repeat all these supply chain mishaps, more ships running aground, empty shelves at the store, that kind of thing?
Well, Fasir actually seems pretty hopeful, She sees companies out there actually making these changes. It's about leadership, really, making those tough calls and challenging the way things have always been done.
No easy feat, that's for sure.
Definitely not. In her book, she even teases some examples of companies who are getting it right, which I'm dying to get my hands on.
But in the meantime, it really makes you think, what are the hidden supply chains in our own lives beyond just the stuff we buy? Could we be using some of these ideas, this whole outside-in approach to do things better?
Oh, absolutely. Think about your job, your hobbies, anything where you need something specific at a specific time. Chances are there's a supply chain at play there somewhere.
Dennis said it better myself. All right, folks, that's a wrap on today's deep dive into the world of supply chains. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.